We are on live, Julie, and before starting your session, I want to introduce you to our audience. Uh, Julie Broad is a founder of the self-publishing services from book launchers and an Amazon overall best-selling author. She runs a popular YouTube channel, Book Launchers TV, where she teaches not non-fiction authors how to write and market books that resonate with readers. An expert in writing with marketing in mind, Julie has been speaking across Canada and the US since 2009. She shares proven strategies to help authors achieve results, make an impact, and increase their earnings. More information about her can be found at julieboard.com. That was a really great bio, Julie. You have done a really great job, and the stage is all yours.
Great, thank you. All right, so who already is an author? Go ahead, use that chat. Let me know how many authors we already have here. And hopefully you can see the slides on there. It looks, there we go, they're on now. All right, fantastic. So welcome. I've got a thumbs up from Lacey. I don't know if that means she's written a book, but you can feel free to tell us about your book as well. We're going to chat about 3 ways, power moves, if you will, to help you use a book to grow your brand. And if you have a business, which by the way, here's a secret, if you're an author, you have a business because your book is your business. So this is going to be how to use your book to grow your business. Now, I got 3 kind of main themes that we're going to cover, which is one, the hook that sells. And this is the thing that if you haven't written your book yet, you're going to be excited that you learned this today, because this will help you with everything you do as an author. And if you already have your book out, it may have you rethinking how you're marketing that book, or maybe have you thinking about a second edition. Number 2 is the thing that is not a marketing strategy. And we'll talk about what is a strategy, but hope is not a marketing strategy. And then we're going to talk about how to leverage your book, not just sell it, so that you are growing a brand and a business around there. So we've got Evelyn and Sophia and Julia all saying hello. So hello back. I'm going to dive right in and share just a little bit about my background, because many of you have probably never heard of me or book launchers. And for me, I am in Las Vegas in the United States, but I grew up in Canada, and my whole story of how I got into the book world started in Canada. And I was working at a company called Kimberly-Clark. They have Kleenex and all those kind of fun things. Kleenex, Huggies, Kotex, all that stuff. And one of my coworkers recommended a book. And I did what I had to do in 2001. And I wrote down the name of the book and drove to the store and bought the book. And I read it that weekend. And it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I immediately decided that I needed to get my money working for me. And I started devouring every book I could find on real estate investing. And I bought my first property. And that's that beautiful thing there in the bottom corner, which, funny enough, that driveway doesn't look that steep, but that driveway was like this. Like I got a good deal on the property for a reason. But it started all of my lessons in real estate and all the things I learned that, you shouldn't do. And I started writing a newsletter in 2006. You can see that beautiful thing in the top right corner. And that newsletter grew without me having a website. It grew because people heard about it, they forwarded it to their friends, and people would write in, and I had to manually add them in. And then in 2009, I started a YouTube channel, and then that grew too. And little bit by bit, I was growing this thing called a platform. And Wiley, one of the publishing companies, contacted me and said, "Hey, we're interested in doing a book with you." And suddenly the little girl in me that always thought she'd be a writer until somebody told her writers don't make money, she was like, "I'm going to get a book deal." So I told them excitedly about this idea I'd been carrying around for a little bit. And they went, "Oh, no, not that idea." So then they said, "Here is the idea that we want you to write a book proposal about." And so I spent 3 months, I hired people to help me, and I wrote this book proposal and I sent it in, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And then they email me and say, "The marketing department doesn't think you have a strong enough platform," there's that word again, "to sell books. So we're not actually going to give you a deal." So first they hated my idea, and now they were rejecting me. And I can smile about it because it was truly the greatest thing that happened to me. But at the time, I was absolutely devastated. And it took me a little bit to recover because I also had friends that did get book deals around the same time. And so I was looking at them going, what do they have that I don't have? And it was hard. But ultimately, I was being given a great gift because I went back to that original idea and I wrote it. And I thought, you know what? I'll self publish this so nobody can tell me what to do. And I'm going to write the book that maybe nobody will want, but I don't believe that because I've read every book there is to read on in the real estate space. And this book hadn't been written. And so I did. I published the book idea that I had, which is called More Than Cash Flow. And I took it to #1 in print books on Amazon. And it was in the top 100 print books for almost 200 days. It outsold Dan Brown and the Game of Thrones. Like it did really, really well. So Wiley didn't know what they were talking about. But it also fueled this whole new world for me, which was, what we know today as thought leadership. I started speaking on these big stages. I was on TV stations, always the morning show. Nobody ever wanted to talk to me in the evening. So I had to be coherent and lively at 6 a.m. But I won a top 40 under 40 award. I was in, front cover of magazines and newspapers and the whole thing. And what I realized was the power of the right book to grow your brand and your business. And it wasn't immediate, but this all happened in 2013. And by 2017, I was starting to work with so many real estate folks that wanted to write a book to help them raise capital, to help them, as realtors or mortgage brokers, that I decided to start a company that would help people write, publish, and promote a book. Because one of the reasons why my book did so well was because it was perfectly positioned to help a specific person. And I also had a lot of fuel on my fire because Wiley had rejected me and I didn't think it was going to sell. So I was ready to hustle to make it work. But ultimately, I started to see the power of the right book, but the need for all of that to be under one roof, because a lot of people write a book and then they figure out how to sell it. And then they wonder why they're not achieving their goals. And it's because there's a disconnect. You have to write the book with the reader and the goals in mind. But before I get into kind of those 3 power moves, I do believe that for so many people, there's a handful of mistakes that get made all the time. And one of them is they don't do a book for whatever reason. And if you are a speaker or you want to be a speaker or you have a brand that you're building or a business that you're building, a book is a tremendous tool in your tool belt. And I work with a lot of people in the financial space, and they're always competing on, well, we have 25 years or we have 130 years combined experience in this space. Or they, compete on letters after their name. But everybody has all of those credentials. So what if you're the person who wrote the book on the problem and the solution to that problem that your ideal reader or customer or anything can do? We even have worked with people who want to change careers, and they write a book to position themselves as the expert so they can not only get the job they want, but get the highest paid possible job that they want. And who's going to say no to somebody who takes the amount of effort, energy, and expertise to write a book on a subject? It's a powerful tool to differentiate yourself from anybody. So that's a mistake, not having a book. Oops, I hit 2 buttons here all at once. We'll cover both these. The other mistake I see, though, is people pay to be in an anthology. And, they say, well, now I'm an author and now I can say I'm a best-selling author. Well, if you pay to be in an anthology, you're paying for a chapter, right? So you might write, a short chapter, 2,000, 5,000 words at the absolute most. And now you're part of this book. And yeah, you can say you're an author, but what has it really done for you? And so to give you an example, I was part of this anthology, this Business Life Universe anthology. And you know how hard it was for me to find on Amazon what this book was when I didn't know the title? I searched for my name and it didn't come up. And I eventually had to go and start searching I had to find the title from the person and search for the title to get this screenshot for you. And you see, that's because when you're part of an anthology, there's not enough room for 20 names or 12 names or 15 names to be called the author. So you get a little line item down here in the description that says contributors. Yeah. So now when I want to go and book a speaking engagement, do you think that's going to help me? It doesn't help. And so there, In this case, I didn't actually spend money to be a part of this book, but many people pay $2,000, $5,000, $8,000 to be a part of this. And they say, well, now I can say I've written a book with so-and-so famous person. But really, is it getting you where you want to go? And wouldn't you be better to say, I'm the author of this book, and I wrote the book on the subject that solves this problem or tells this story? So much more powerful. And then the other, oops, there we go. It's clicking forward. The other mistake is either writing the wrong book or playing small with your book. Some people just say, oh, it's just a business card book, and they throw it out there in the world, but they're actually embarrassed about it. We have a lot of people who come to us at book launchers that are like, oh, I wrote a book, but don't look at it, please. And I just say, it's like you've rolled up expecting to get money for whether it's your speaking engagement or your services or whatever it is, and you're rolling up in a beater trying to tell somebody you're worth the Rolls Royce or the sports car. You have to make investments in yourself to showcase your brand so that you get paid what you're worth, right? If you're rolling up in a beater, it doesn't have the same thing. And I say beater because some books had no editing. They DIY'd their cover and it looks like a beater, right? They thought, well, it's just a business card. I just need something to hand out. Well, that can work. But really, where the real power comes from is when you write a book so good, people read it, they now recommend it, and they're going to positively review it, because that's when your book is going to get you amazing opportunities, is when people read it and love it, they want to say a positive review, and they're going to recommend or refer you to other people. Now, before I tell you the 3 things that I want to share about how to do this really successfully, and I was just checking my time over here, is I want to note that a lot of people don't want to self-publish because it has had for a long time connotations that aren't always positive. But I can tell you, not just from the almost 800 authors we've worked with at book launchers, but from my own experience, there is very little a self-published author can't do that a traditionally published author can. And in fact, as a self-published author, you own your rights, you can direct it, you're the CEO of your project, so you have control over the topic, the cover, all of those fun things. But also you can do it so much faster. But I was speaking at the American Library Association, and I was talking about working with self-published authors and helping them with the self-published process because they get asked by a lot of their patrons. And I had this one woman sitting back there, and she just sat there cross-armed, and she looks at me and she goes, we don't carry self-published books in our library. And I said, oh, and a few other people in the room were nodding like, we don't either. And I said, oh, really? Oh, okay. I said, so you don't carry the books by David Goggins? And I started naming some of the books. And then I even had this slide or similar one to this. I've added a few books to it since. I'm like, so you don't have David Goggins or Pat Flynn or Seth Godin or James Altucher. I didn't have the Alex Hormozi or the Taylor Swift book at the time, but I had all these other ones. And they went, well, yeah, of course we carry those. Those are bestsellers. I was like, they're all self-published. And their mouths just dropped. And so I think a lot of people think self-published means not good, which is why you don't want to roll up in that beater of a car. You want to have a sports car. And when you have a sports car, nobody's going to even know that you self-published because nobody thinks David Goggins did. A lot of people know Taylor Swift did because it was well talked about, but also she had a massive team behind her. But, Alex Hormozi's book has sold hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies, maybe even more than that, completely self-published. So how do you position yourself for success? Well, number 1 is the hook. And it's the hook that sells. And if you can write your book with this in mind, you're going to set yourself up for so much more success. But if you've already got your book out, think about what this is for your book, because this is your marketing angle. And this is the outcome of the outcome for the reader and how you're uniquely positioned to get them there. So what does that mean? Well, the kind of funny, ridiculous example that I use is, let's say you wrote a book on how to have hair regrow. And you might think every bald person is your audience. And in fact, my dad, as an example, he's been bald since his 20s, and he's, I don't actually know his actual age. Isn't that terrible? 81. Let's call him 81. I think he's either turning 81 this year or he's already 81. Regardless, I mean, that's a lot of decades where he's been bald and does not care. So you're not selling that book to him. But my friend flew to Europe a couple years ago and got hair plugs put in his hair because he didn't think he was getting the kind of dates that he was looking for, basically. And he thought it was because he didn't have hair. So the solution isn't the hair regrowth. It is the confidence that comes with having a full head of hair that now allows you to strut in and ask for what you're worth in your job and ask that girl on the date, all of those kind of things. That's what you're selling. That's the outcome of the outcome. It's just like we worked with somebody who had a book on heart health, and he was trying to convince us that everybody's the audience because everybody has a heart, but not everybody is caring about their heart health right now. So you have to find that outcome of the outcome and then talk about how you are uniquely positioned. And that's your story. That's your goals. That's your background. That's that layer on top of this that makes you uniquely the person to help that reader. And that's why you have to know that reader really clearly. One thing I always tell people is your book might be about you, but it's not for you. What do you offer your reader? So important. And your reader is not everyone. Get clear, get specific. And a lot of people get afraid of that. And so I have another example on another slide. I'm actually going to go to it first before I tell you about Michael. This one right here. So a lot of people are afraid of being too niche. So this is a book on tactical lock picking. We did this one quite a few years ago, but it's still my favorite example. And it's all about getting through locked obstacles to save lives and reduce property damage. And this book, because my team, we help them write it and publish the book, but we also have a team of marketers who pitch you for speaking and media and run ads and book awards and all that stuff. And so in our first round of pitching, we usually have somewhere between a 10 to 20% success rate in getting somebody exposure. And so that exposure might be like media or speaking or something like that, but it's 10 to 20%. With this book, it was 75% because it's so specific. It's for first responders, and first responders need this information. And in fact, that first round, we got him a paid speaking engagement, which doesn't happen. And then after that, we also had somebody contact us from a crime writers conference. So everybody's thinking, well, you're only going to have so many companies that do first responder training. And there's this company there's this event booker for this crime writers conference that wanted him to come and speak. So when you have a niche audience, you're more likely to start off with a bang and have a lot of success, but you'll find periphery audiences as well. But if you start trying to target everyone, it's like you're that little speck in an ocean trying to stand out. Now, going back to Michael, he's an example of a book that lacked a hook that would sell. He came to us with a manuscript called The Empathy Formula, and he'd gotten some pretty strong feedback that this was never going to sell. And we took a look at it, and the content was really, really good, but it was positioned as the empathy formula, like why empathy will help you make more money and have more fulfillment. And we're like, ooh, like the people who need empathy, they're not buying this. So how do we make this book something that's going to sell and going to pop? And he's had, 20 some jobs in his life. And he just talked about how in almost all of those jobs, people thought they had to be mean to get results. And in fact, he said, mean people suck. And if you're nice, you actually make more money, have more fun, all these things. And all of a sudden we were like, that's it. That's the book. Mean people suck. And so we created that. And that's a marketable hook. You can see he's standing in front of a room. He was about to give a big talk on this subject. He's got it on his shirt. It's brandable. It's memorable. And it's a hook that sells. And that's what you need for your book. And it may not be, that's why I said you may come out with a second edition. It may not be that the whole content needs to be revised, because his book is still the empathy formula at its heart. It's just that we repackaged it as Mean People Suck. Okay, so going back here, your marketing strategy. We're not going to use hope as our marketing strategy, because posting is not the same as promoting, and doing ads without strategy is like flushing it down a toilet. and getting on the stage or not having that strategy doesn't have stage or media appeal. So what you want to do is you want to have a whole package. And I know this slide is itty bitty, so I'll talk you through it. Our client, Jonathan Stanley, 8 months after his book came out, so many months after many authors stopped talking about their book, he was still out doing book signings. He was at a Barnes & Noble, did a humble little signing. Somebody recorded a video of the signing, and that went hyper viral, like 100 million views on TikTok. And as a result, his book skyrocketed, sold thousands and thousands and thousands of copies, and had 100 new reviews in a very short period of time. All of this happened because hope wasn't a strategy. Yes, he got luck. That lightning bolt happened to strike, but he was ready. His book was really well packaged. That title, Purposeful Performance, he told me he's gotten compliments on that title from so many people. And we worked hard on that title, but the book is a really good read. So again, go back to that thing where I said you have to be read, referred, or read, well reviewed, and then referred. Well, people read his book and loved it, and it just grew. If his book stunk when this happened, this thing would have fallen flatter than a pancake, right? So it is having a great book, because when luck happens, you want to be able to hand that book to somebody amazing. One of our clients was able to hand her book to George Clooney and got an endorsement from him. If you have a bad book and you happen to have that lightning bolt moment, are you going to be excited about handing it to somebody and going, like, if think about the greatest person in your space that you could possibly run into, and you hand them your book, are you proud and excited when you do that? And is it well packaged? Really important. But also having a clear author brand and having all your social media, everything in alignment with that brand, so that when something does happen and people check you out, it looks consistent and appealing to that person and the media. And the media kit was really important because People Magazine, Good Morning America, USA Today, like you name an outlet, he was featured in the couple of weeks after. And he had a great media kit. He was media ready because we do media training. He had media questions. He had everything ready to go. That's so important. And of course, he had all the online systems set up so people could buy his book, so he could sell thousands. And most important, he showed up with an attitude of gratitude. Now, Sophia is saying, how can a book build a personal brand? It is a tool that you use to grow that brand. And so that's kind of what I'm saying. He was out there selling his book at a Barnes & Noble, but now all of a sudden, all the media wanted to talk to him. And your brand is you, right? Your brand is the things that people talk about and say about you when you're not in a room. And ultimately, to help control what people say or craft or curate what is said about you, that all comes down to that hook that we've talked about and this packaging, right? The title of your book, your social media, your website, all of that comes together. And then for me, I think a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room, right? How are you known? How do people recommend and refer you? And writing the right book helps with all of that. Now, the final move that we're going to talk about before we wrap is a power move where you leverage your book. And that's kind of going into this question, which is, how do you use your book, right? How you've got a book, now what? And really a book, yes, it's nice to sell books. And, when you self-publish, when you traditionally publish, you can look forward to making, about $1 per book you sell. When you self-publish, depending on how you price it, you might make $4 to $6 per book sold. Or if you're selling books at the back of the room, you might make $10 per book sold. So you're not making big bucks on books. But what you can do is kind of like we talked about, tactical lock picking. He was getting paid speaking engagements to go teach people how to pick locks. And Jonathan Stanley, he's got so many opportunities now. One of our clients yesterday actually just told me his book's getting translated into Russian. He got a Russian publisher. So he owns his rights everywhere, but now in the Russian language, he has sold it. He's getting a lump sum payment and then royalties for the sale. But for me, a book can be currency. So I can use my book to get things in exchange. I've given books to magazines and they use them to give away to subscribers. And they've given me ad space and booth space at their events. So a book can be a tool that you use. It can also be if a speaking event doesn't have a budget to pay you as a speaker, you can often sell them books instead, because they can use books as marketing. Like every attendee will get a free book. That might come from their marketing budget where they don't have a speaker budget. So you can use it as currency. You can turn your book, when you own it, you can turn it into a course. You can turn it into a consulting gig. You can repurpose it for content, video content, social media content, articles, blog posts, all of that. And you can, I mentioned the licensing, you can run mastermind groups around that content. That was one of the most powerful things I did with my first book, is I started a mastermind group for real estate investors. And that group filled up after the book came out. It filled up every single year. And we were charging $10,000 a group. And that was back in 2013, 2014. So mastermind groups around a concept of a book can be really, really powerful. Ultimately, I think just think about how you can build your empire around it. We have clients that build apps. from their book, and then they start membership groups. We have other clients who now are writing articles for paid outlets and doing keynote talks around their book. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. Julia just asked, do self-published books have the same credibility as traditionally published? And I mean, I'll argue yes, but only if you do it so well they don't know you self-published, right? Going back to my comment about the American Library Association, if I can get back to that slide, all of these books are self-published, and they have just as much credibility as a traditionally published book and have sold many more copies than many of the traditionally published books. But it comes down to whether you invest in the quality or not, because a lot of people self-publish and there's no gatekeeper to say, hey, you need to have another editor go over this. A lot of people will do one edit. Our books, we have 3 different editors go through them, and traditionally published books will have 3 or 4 edits as well. So the quality is up to you. And that is why some self-published books don't get the respect. But if you produce a book that is so good nobody knows it's self-published, then the world is your oyster and all the opportunities are there for you that anybody else can touch. There's nothing you can't do as a self-published author that a traditionally published author can do, except make the New York Times list. They have yet to put a self-published nonfiction book on their list. But it's a game anyways. That whole list is curated. And we know for a fact there's quite a few authors that way outsell some of the authors that are on the New York Times bestselling list, and they don't make it. And some of them are traditionally published and some are self-published. So it's very much a curated list, and they even disclose that openly. So it's up to you if it's going to have the quality and how it's going to be perceived. Ultimately, I recommend you build your empire around your book. This is one of our authors, Nick Hutchison. He wrote Rise of the Reader. And when he wrote this book, he already had a company that helps authors with creating video content and some social media content called Book Thinkers. And he used his book to further expand his empire. And he's now running live events. He has coaching and consulting on top of the services that his company Book Thinkers has. He's building an empire, and it all surrounds this particular book. So think big, because when you do, the opportunities are great. Okay, so really recapping really quick, have a hook that sells, and that hook is about your reader. The book might be about you, but it's for your reader. Have a strategy. So know your goal, and then have a marketing strategy. Open the doors, whether it's podcasts or speaking or other tactics that you're using. Hope is not the strategy that's going to get you found, and make sure you're ready for it. Have that packaging, the website, the social media, the book, all ready for that. And then get ready to leverage that book, because it's not just the book, it's the content in that book, and that can become your entire empire. All right, if you would like, you can book a call with me directly, not somebody on my team, but with me directly to chat about your book idea or your book if you're thinking I need to do a second edition. So we'll work on clarity. Oh, sorry, my pop-up popped up. We'll work on clarity. We'll help you figure out what support you need. So you can fill out that form, booklaunchers.com/apply. And also you can get a book to help you because everybody needs a little bit of guidance around how to write a book that's set up to sell. So you can get this book free in audio format at booklaunchers.com/free audio. All right, I see another question. How do you turn readers into paying clients? Again, that's totally up to you and what kind of business you're running. You can create courses, you can put it into your funnel and send them an email and encourage them to hire you for whatever it is you do. Everybody's going to tackle that a little differently, but that's why I told you to think about your empire and then build it.
Yes, thank you so much, Julie, for your valuable presentation. We got so many questions from our audience, Julie. We are running out of time, so we will post it to an email so you can respond there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.